Hi, I'm Manny. These videos are about messages channeled from an ET through automatic writing. In the first video on black holes, I was a little more extensive on my bio and the primary messenger that I've called GLOOF and what automatic writing is. So, for purposes of this video, which is on electric cars, suffice it to say that I'm not an engineer and that GLOOF is an ET channeled from automatic writing. Automatic writing is the process of finding a quiet place in your home, stilling your mind, and on paper and pencil, write down the impressions as they come. In the first video, some of you were quick to point out that Albert Einstein wrote his theory of relativity in 1916. I said 2016, my mistake. And that I said that I would read you some of the writings verbatim so that you could get a feel and a flavor of how I channel what comes on paper. And I will add it to the second part. This is going to be in two parts. Please remember to like and subscribe. And I do have a PayPal account, so your love contributions or gifts are always welcome. Electric cars. The writing on electric cars begins as a mental image, if you will, of I'm standing with GLOOF, and we are in like a showroom or a very large warehouse, very clean. But I also felt other vibratory signatures so that I knew there were other ETs there with me. And we're all looking at this car, a typical late model sedan, 4 doors, white or milk colored. And I felt a lot of skepticism. Like they're looking at this thing and saying, is this all we got to work with, or is this it? But nonetheless, they look at it, and then they lift the vehicle in the air and start to rotate it 360 degrees. It was like an image, a graphic image of like a computer model of a car spinning slowly. And it gets better because then it was blown up schematically. The nuts, the bolts, the doors, the hood, everything started to float out so they could see the entire car. And this only took a few seconds. It was just like a visual image. But then I felt general agreement, and I wrote, most of the energy goes to create momentum, but weight and function limit the range. Your power pack, that's the battery, is limited. You really haven't made great strides in this area, and that's because the idea of carrying and storing electricity in a container using chemicals and metal alloys is limited in itself. There is not much more that can be done here. So, okay, let's work on improving range, working with what you have. And there were 4 ideas they came with, but right away the first 2 were portable exchangeable power packs and momentum released flywheels. So let me get right to it. The image of the portable exchangeable power packs was, if you're looking at the car, it's back down assembled on the showroom where you would put in the gasoline on a normal car. You lift the lid and put the pump in there. They had 3 portholes, very round. Actually, it was 3, 6, and 9. And I said, hey, those are Nick Tesla numbers, and they kind of grinned. But the idea was that you could carry at any given time 3, 6, or 9. The door to the lid opens, and I saw a battery come out about the size of a large thermos, what we used to twist the top and put coffee in. 18 to 24 inches long, maybe 3 to 5 inches in diameter, and with a twist handle where you could put your hand in it, twist it, out it came. There was an electrical duct on the other side. And the whole concept was that without creating new structures, you could, much like we do a barbecue grill, propane tank that goes to a barbecue grill, you could take it out, walk into a convenience store, a gas station, a hardware store, a large box store. I mean, everybody does that in the U.S. And just walk up to the attendant and very quickly exchange your battery packs. They're showing me where each battery pack could perhaps add 15 to 20 miles. And of course, you don't always have to have all 9 portholes filled because that adds weight. But you always want to be prudent and have a few extra because all of us have a routine where we pretty much know where we want to drive. But in the case of an emergency where you have to go 40, 50, 70 extra miles in a hurry, it would be very convenient to just be able to pull up to a station, exchange, and go off. Always the cheapest way to recharge your car is at home, but we're talking here about an emergency or a need to quickly go another 70 miles or so, and we always pay a little more for convenience. Now, we also talked about, of course, here we're dominated. The cars are dominated by about a dozen or so manufacturers. It would be daunting enough to get them all to agree, but once came to agreement, much like we have on wheel wells and certain size batteries and things, then the original equipment manufacturers could produce them. It would obviously probably entail different sizes for, much like we have AA batteries, AAA batteries, or D batteries. You would have different size batteries depending on the size of the vehicle. The key would be obviously that it wouldn't weigh a whole lot more than, say, a gallon of milk, so that most of us could carry it in and out of a convenience store quickly and without much problem. It would add range. It is convenient. I mean, for example, Tesla does have refilling stations, and that's a great thing, but I understand they can take, half an hour, 45 minutes sometimes. So this would be quick and convenient. The concept of the flywheels was interesting. They showed me a plastic rod running under the chassis full of little flywheels about the size of your hand, and they were close, but not too close to create friction, obviously. What they suggested was that as the car begins to decelerate, you either put your foot on the brake or take your foot off the accelerator, the flywheels would be released and they would start spinning, obviously helping to slow the car down a little bit by creating drag and friction. But most important, as you're already decelerating, that energy that would otherwise be wasted would spin the flywheels and generating some electricity that could be dripped into, if not the primary battery, the auxiliary functions of the car, like the windshield wipers, headlights, radio, air conditioning. There is no perfect engine, so what do we do with the flywheels when they're not in use? Because they would create drag and friction, and they suggested that you could have them retractable. Like an airplane, when it takes off, it retracts its wheels. When the car is trying to gain momentum or accelerating, the flywheels would retract. Again, I'm not an engineer, but the more moving pieces you have, the more liable there is for something to go wrong. So they suggested if you don't want to have an active retractable mechanism, you could add a thin aileron, a little wing in front of the flywheel, so that when they're not in use, cars accelerating and they're not in use, you could either move the wing to lift the air over them or under them, either creating drag or lift. Lift would have the advantage of making the car lighter, but you have to be very careful that you don't lift it enough that you lose control in hydroplane. These are engineering details, but it could be done by diverting the path of the air so that it doesn't catch the flywheel while it's locked in. In the second part of this video, we're going to touch on a couple more interesting things about electric car that they suggested, but these were the two main ones. And then, time permitting, after the other two ideas that they shared with me, we'll go into a little bit of the gloof writing. Just so you know, the other two ideas were, very briefly, a power pack that would be a receptor and then a feeder gun. But I'll cover that in more detail in a second. And the fourth idea they gave me was one of a spider web, a netting of very fine individual photovoltaic cells. So this is electric cars part 1, and I will have electric cars part 2 as soon as I can. Thank you, and stay tuned for the second one.